Good morning. I'm Josette Pacino, your worship associate for today. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert. As we begin, we acknowledge that we are on the historic homelands of the various bands of Kiowa people, and we honor the unique relationship that we hope emerges between our community and the indigenous people and their traditional territories. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Kiowa people whose lands and water we benefit from today. Before we begin, we also want you to know that it doesn't matter where you or your ancestors are from, who you love, your gender identity, your theology, politics, or your immigration status. We welcome all those who are committed to our core values as expressed in our 7 principles. Together, we come to this place to share our hopes, dreams, and visions. We seek to build a diverse and inclusive community that honors our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every being. Thank you for being with us this morning. Please consider making a donation with our virtual offering basket. Your contribution is an important way to support EUCOD and our Share the Plate recipient today, Planned Parenthood. Those of you watching on Zoom can just click on the link provided in our weekly Constant Contact order of worship you received on Friday or at the end of the service today through the email link you will receive. If you are here in the room, there are offering baskets next to each door where you can drop your contribution. If you would like to be on our email list to learn more about us and our programming, please contact us at admin, that's ADMIN, at uucod.org. And now we bring our Tibetan bowl to begin our service, and then listen to music, our music for centering.
Good morning and welcome. I am the Reverend Ian Riddell, and I have the honor of serving as the minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert. We are a community gathered not by creed or single belief, but by our commitment to the thriving of the world and our commitment to each other. Commitments to work together, to learn together and explore together, and commitments to nurture each other. We come together today near the winter solstice and the longest night of the year, even here in the desert. Not to banish the darkness or the cold, but to remind ourselves as we explore the darkness that we are not abandoning the light. That the dark and the light, the day and the night are one holy circle. Welcome to worship today.
I'd like to invite you to follow along with our chalice lighting. May love be the spirit of this church. May the quest for truth be its sacrament and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. And now if Sarita and Barbara, you'll do it, sorry.
Sorry, just Sarita, my apologies. Sarita will come forward today to light our BioPOC candles, and I will invite you, please, to join me as we read these words together. We light these candles in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and other people of color as they journey towards spiritual wholeness. May we, as a beloved community, work to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression. May we live out our principles so that justice, dignity, and equity for all prevail. Now I invite you to be comfortable in your seat, to breathe deeply, and if you hum along, you can hum along for our hymns for meditation, Spirit of Life, Fuente de Amor.
Good morning. It's nice to see you all this morning, and it's especially nice to be here in person, so I'm loving being back. I have to say that. But this morning, it is my pleasure to introduce Jackie Casillas, Donors Relations Manager from Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest, and our Share the Plate recipient for this month. These are difficult and complex times for women around the issue of women's health care, especially reproductive rights. In my life, I have seen the arc of women's rights move towards providing more comprehensive care for women and girls. But I have also seen the ongoing assault on these rights, and I'm old enough, yes, to have seen firsthand the effect on women when these rights are taken away. Through all of this, Planned Parenthood has been there. This organization has remained steadfast in its commitment to patients, women, men, families, and its vision of a world without barriers to sexual and reproductive education and health care. While Planned Parenthood has become known in the media and political world as a provider of safe, affordable, and accessible abortions, the truth is Planned Parenthood does so much more. It is one of the largest providers of affordable health care in the nation for low-income families. We are extremely fortunate to have Planned Parenthood here in the Coachella Valley, and your generosity, of course, is greatly appreciated. So please join me in welcoming Jackie Casillas.
Good morning, everyone. It is so nice to be with you. Thank you so much for the invitation to join you. I'm Jackie Casillas, and yes, I do work with Planned Parenthood, but before I worked with Planned Parenthood, I was also a Planned Parenthood patient. Planned Parenthood has been a vital part in my life in helping me live a healthy, productive, and fulfilling life of mine, to have access to good care and to non-judgmental care. And unfortunately, while abortion is a small part of what we do, lately it has become a lot of what's in the news. So I am going to talk to you a little bit about that. But I do want to begin by thanking you for the invitation to join you this morning and for the years of support that the UU Church of the Desert has shown us. Your support fuels our mission to provide high-quality, non-judgmental health care to all of our communities. So from all of us, and from the patients that you help, we thank you. This past year has not been without a share of challenges for reproductive health care. From the 6-week abortion ban in Texas that the Supreme Court refused to block, to the 15-week Mississippi abortion ban that is currently working its way through the Supreme Court, in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization that is threatening to reverse the established precedent of Roe v. Wade. We are on the precipice of creating a different world for women in America, and there's no more important time than the present to stay informed and engaged. On September 1st, Texas' radical 6-week abortion ban, known as SB 8, went into effect. It made abortion illegal in the state after 6 weeks, which is oftentimes before many people realize that they are pregnant. It also includes a provision that allows individual citizens, including abusive partners, neighbors, and protesters who have no connection to the patient, to sue anyone they believe provided assistance to that patient in seeking care, and to collect $10,000 for each successful claim. Among those who could be sued are clergy who provide spiritual counsel to someone who's having an abortion. Religion is all too often used to justify bans and restrictions on access to reproductive health care. And that is just wrong and immoral. While there are sincere religious differences when it comes to abortion, we must honor the freedom necessary for each pregnant person to make the decision that is right for them according to their personal conscience and beliefs. Abortion bans such as SB 8 in Texas and restrictions on access privilege the personal beliefs and political goals of some politicians above the needs, rights, and freedoms of pregnant people. Of even greater concern is the Supreme Court's deliberation in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. On December 1st, the court heard oral arguments on this ban, and I won't mince words. We are at a crisis point. This court case could leave at least 36 million women without access. That's nearly half of the women of reproductive age between 18 to 49 in the United States. Over the past several decades, politicians have steadily pushed harsher restrictions, defunded essential community health centers and programs, and stacked the federal courts to ensure that these policies stay in place. We cannot be complacent and hope that the courts will protect us. Access hangs by a thread. We need allies to show up for the people who have abortions in their communities and help us end abortion stigma, whether it's volunteering or donating to your local abortion fund and independent clinics, talking to the people in your family about access, or sharing stories. We all have a part to play. But there have also been some victories recently. For instance, our state of California is leading the way on reproductive freedom and recently established the California Future of Abortion Council. The council works in collaboration with researchers, advocates, policymakers, providers, patients, and key constituents to determine potential challenges in the state and submit recommendations for solution that will continue to provide stability and sanctuary for both Californians and those who may seek service here from other states, which we're already seeing. And then there was Friday's announcement that the U.S. Food and Drug Administration will permanently remove the unnecessary and onerous in-person requirements for mifepristone. It's one of 2 medications used in medication abortion. This decision acknowledges that forcing patients to travel unnecessarily to a health center to access the safe, effective medication they need is especially harmful to people of color, people with low incomes, and those living at the intersection of these identities who already face more barriers to care. This decision by the FDA is a positive step to increase access to essential health care when the people's constitutional rights are at a crisis point. We're grateful to the FDA and that they have followed the science and made this decision, but there's still a lot of work ahead. Systemic barriers to care continue to push access out of reach for many people. So I encourage you to stay informed and get involved in whatever meaningful way you can, because we need you now more than ever. Thank you again for all of your service and for your support of Planned Parenthood's care.
This reading is called Embracing the Darkness by Dana at the Druid Garden. Living by the seasons and with the seasons means shifting our mindsets and practices to align more closely with nature's rhythms, and darkness is a part of that cycle. The darkness in this season functions much like the hanged man in the tarot. We draw the hanged man when we are in need of a new perspective. Darkness, even darkness in familiar spaces and ways, gives us that perspective fully and powerfully. In her book, Full Moon Feast, Jessica Prentice describes humanity's relationship to the dark and cold months of the year. She notes at least one African tribe that sleeps for 14 hours in the darkness and who uses that extra time for visionary and spirit work. Without this darkness, she says, our souls are robbed of this opportunity to engage in a deep level with our soul. I think maybe that's part of the challenge we face. The frenzied culture works hard to keep us all going, doing, and time for deep introspection and reflection is generally not encouraged. The darkness asks us individually to be with only ourselves and our own thoughts. It is this darkness where we can commune with spirit in waking dreams or in sleep, in meditation, and in visionary work. Part of this is because darkness functions through visual sensory deprivation. But when our external visuals shut down, as in meditation, dreaming, journeying, our inner visuals have the ability to be developed and honed. It allows us time to sort through things. It gives us space and distance from everything that surrounds us and allows us rest and quietude. And darkness serves us as a negative space to complement the other spaces in our lives, the middle points as well as that of the light. We appreciate the light all the better if we are not always in it. It gives us balance and perspective. Darkness, furthermore, allows us to have some sacred distance between ourselves and the many inventions that our lives are full of. Distance from electronic devices, from artificial blinding lighting, from television, and so on. I think that a lot of us see the Wheel of the Year as a string of rituals and celebrations, and it certainly can be that, but it can also be more. Really to embrace and live in that energy of the season can make a world of difference. We go from fighting against it and wanting it to be over to really living in the present moment with it.
These are the joys and sorrows of our community on this 19th of December. We light a candle for Ingrid Joyal, who had knee surgery on Thursday. We're sending her healing energy. Our hearts go out today to Janice Dunn and her family. Her beloved husband, Bill, passed away suddenly on December 10th. Bill and Janice are long-term members of All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and have been enthusiastic friends and supporters of UUCOD for several years, and were eagerly seeking dual membership. We light a candle with thoughts of safety for Reverend Joseph Santos Lyons, our beloved conversations coach, and his family during the typhoon that has hit the Philippines. Katie Foss lights a candle of joy that she says that my son Evan can be with me for the holidays after a 2-year hiatus due to the pandemic. It is so good to share this time with him and my daughter Chelsea, and that the three of us can be together. Margaret lights a candle today in honor of her mother Gladys, who was born 3 years before women had the right to vote. She was widowed and raised 4 children on her own. Margaret is grateful for her love and her boundless strength. And I light a candle today for my cousin Brad, who passed away on Monday, for his wife Paula and his children Megan and Caitlin, and his parents, my aunt and uncle Janet and Brian. They are gathering on Tuesday for memorial service, and so I light a candle for them and for all who are traveling there to be safe. And we also hold in our hearts, we light a candle for those joys and sorrows that remain silent in the quiet of our heart, those that are just bursting forth. That will come in a moment. That are bursting forth. We carry all so much with us these days. These days we carry our own lives. We carry the world that comes to us through the news and through social media and through our neighbors. We carry so much in our hearts. And so we pause now for just a moment to breathe in the quiet of this space, to acknowledge our connections to each other, and feel our connection to the spirit of life and love that flows in and through us, that enlivens our days and brings our dreams to us, that encourages us, that makes us feel connected and safe, and brings us out of our loneliness into community. We carry so much in our hearts. We carry the pain and fear of loss, especially we hold in our hearts those families and people of all kinds in the Midwest suffering from the devastation of hurricanes and tornadoes, not hurricanes, tornadoes. We hold in our hearts all of those across the country, all of us, in fact, who are afraid that the rights, that reproductive rights will be removed and that difficult things will become more difficult. We hold fear in our hearts, but also we hold determination to build a different world. We carry all of these things in our heart, including our continuing struggle with a pandemic that doesn't seem to end and that doesn't offer us any clear ways to act. So we rely on each other, on our connections, on our conversations, on our love for each other to carry us through these days. We breathe together in the silence of this space, knowing that we are held in a broad, deep, and everlasting love. May all beings know peace. May all beings know an end to suffering. May all beings know love. When I was 9 years old, the church choir I sang in went to England for 3 weeks to tour around the country and sing in famous churches: Windsor Castle, York Minster, Ely and Coventry cathedrals. It was a wonderful experience to sing in those beautiful places with such deep history. What I remember most, though, are the 2 days we sang evensong evening services at St. Paul's Cathedral in London. St. Paul's is one of the largest churches in the world. The church I grew up in was modeled on St. Paul's, and to be in this massive place, the contours and shapes of my familiar cathedral exploded to massive size was just awe-inspiring. St. Paul's is large enough that if you play a sudden loud chord on the organ, you can actually hear the sound physically moving up and down the nave of the cathedral and bouncing off the walls. The challenge, though, for those singing services there was that the cathedral, as well as being a church, is a huge tourist attraction and is open to thousands of visitors every day. There is no daytime quiet period when you can get in a rehearsal. So rehearsals happened at night, after the tourists had been banished and the doors locked. The doors locked, and terrifyingly, gloriously, magnificently, all the lights in the building, except those right where the choir was singing, turned off. The glorious light-filled, people-filled space became a black void. Darkness that was tangible. Darkness in which you could hear every noise you and the choir and the organ made moving around. It wasn't just absence of light. It was a holy, powerful thing in and of itself. And to sing into that darkness was a great honor. The darkness changed the space. It made it more intimate and more vast at the same time. It invited us to hear ourselves differently as we experienced our voices coming back to us from the darkness. It took us out of time in a way, taking a space that was already old to my 9-year-old perceptions and making it timeless, ancient, primordial. It wasn't frightening, but it was daunting and called forth awe and humility both. Darkness is so much more than the mere absence of light. It isn't just the fact that there are things we can't see or do without the light. It's that it offers a different way of being, of perceiving, of understanding. To go in the dark with a light, writes Wendell Berry, is to know the light. To know the dark, go dark, go without sight, and find that dark too blooms and sings and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings. And here we are again. The wheel of the year has turned, and we are at the darkest time of the cycle of our days, despite the sun we have right now. Now, there is, of course, a scientific, astronomical reason for this. The winter solstice occurs at that moment when that one of the Earth's poles reaches its farthest tilt away from the sun. In the northern hemisphere, this occurs in December, this year on the 21st. In the southern hemisphere, this week will be their summer solstice. It is the time for us when the sun rises lower in the sky than on any other day, and it's the day of maximum darkness and minimum light. It is a moment of turning. The Reverend Barbara Wells Tenhove took the scientific explanation of the solstice and retold it in this way, giving it what she calls a bit of a spiritual slant. She writes, "The dark time has come. The earth in her great dance around the sun has come inevitably to the solstice, the time of extremes, of distance, of darkness and light. In our hemisphere, we experience this time as one of cold darkness, of shortening days and lengthening nights. The earth is tipping, from our perspective, further and further away from the sun. we wait. But the moment when the darkness is greatest is not entirely predictable. The spinning dance of the earth continues, but for one brief instant, when the axis of the earth's rotation crosses the line through the center of our orbit around the sun, the tipping stops. And for a moment, we seem to stand suspended in space, pulsing with potential movement and ongoing life. Then, like a child's top that almost fell over, we are saved by the spin and lifted up again towards the light. I love those words of hers. Humans have been making meaning of the solstice for millennia. Before the advent of clocks and scientifically derived calendars, humans told time, both the time of day and the time and seasons of the year, by the movement of the stars and the sun and the moon, and by the balance of light and darkness. We learned how the sun and the moon and the stars change over time, where and when they rise and set, how high they moved in the sky, how long they showed themselves, to aid us in planning migration and planting and reaping and preparing for changes in the weather. We learned these things for our survival. Many ancient buildings and worship sites and structures, like Stonehenge famously, but many others, were designed and situated to be aligned with the arising and setting of the sun on the day of the winter solstice. We did all these things, but we also wove stories and myths and songs, making meaning of things we didn't understand, seeing things with a new perspective. Many cultures tell stories of gods or powerful humans traveling to the underworld for a time, removing their influence from the world and causing winter to occur. The Babylonian Ishtar, goddess of warriors and also fertility. The Greek Demeter, goddess of all living things, who traveled to Hades to rescue her daughter Persephone. The Norse god Balder, god of illumination and light. All traveled to the underworld to rescue one they loved, or they were sent there by murder, and removed their light and life-bringing powers for a time. Their return from the underworld brought the return of light and life, the turn of the year at the solstice. Other cultures tell stories of battles between avatars of the light and the darkness, with the balance of power or victory shifting over the course of the year. Not that one is bad and the other good, but there is balance. In many cultures, this time when the power of darkness was ascendant was deeply connected with goddesses and gestation and women's role and power. The story of Demeter and Persephone is an example. Demeter traveling to the underworld to rescue her daughter Persephone. And in Nordic and Germanic cultures, the beginning of the Yule season is honored by the celebration of Mother Night, which is a celebration of mothers, but especially Frigg, Norse goddess and the mother of Balder. When the invincible Balder was killed by a spear or a sprig of mistletoe through the trickery of Loki, Frigg travels to beg the queen of the underworld, Hel, to release her son, who was loved by all of the earth's creatures. Hel says she would be convinced to let Balder return if every being on Midgard, on earth, would actually cry for the loss of his light. The version of the story told at this time of year recounts that at Frigg's entreaty, every living being, birds, bees, beetles, fish, and humans, called out for the return of Balder, and he and the light were returned to life. This is where we get our mistletoe from at this time of year. And so the solstice is a time when we, and by we I mean human beings, celebrate and rejoice that the light is returning, that the days are getting longer, that it will get warmer again. The long, dark nights begin to shorten. But even as we celebrate the return of the light, we know that eventually, 6 months from now, it will be the turn of the darkness to return again on the other side of the wheel of the year. It is this balance, the shifting balance between light and dark that brings some meaning to our lives, especially in the days before whale oil and candles and then electricity allowed us to banish the darkness from our nights at a whim. Even when it takes away our ability to see, the darkness can bring us time to nurture our spirits, to focus on our hearts, to be humble in the face of all that we don't control. It can open a space for us to ponder and see ourselves with new perspective. Understanding that light and dark are balanced with each other, that there is no inherent goodness and holiness in light, just as there is no inherent badness and evilness in dark, can help us see patterns in the world around us. When darkness and night are seen as dangerous, inhumane, threatening, and day and light are seen only as pure and holy, human beings seem to find it all too easy to transfer those assumptions to people's skin color and then their character. When all we do is degrade the dark, how do we live our lives with people who are different than we are? When darkness and light are seen as connected, darkness and night, are seen as connected with women's lives and women's power, as connected to nurturing and pregnancy and gestation, and then we denounce darkness as evil, as terrifying and corrupting, we can come to make misogyny out of our one-sided understanding. We connect women's power and agency to the parts of the world that we deride or fear or battle against, and so we direct that fear and that violence at women. I can't help but see the ongoing attacks on reproductive justice and women's power and autonomy over their own bodies as deeply interwoven with this connection of women's power to darkness, to fear and a need to control on the part of those fighting against choice and justice. So many of the holidays we celebrate this time of year, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and others, even the solstice, are about light arriving and banishing the darkness. Of course they are. Cold and dark can be dangerous, very dangerous, still today, even with electricity and heat. And longer and warmer days make our lives easier and gave our ancestors better chances to feed and house themselves safely and warmly. But the darkness can be nurturing. It can bring new perspective. The pause of the solstice, as the sun slows its movement in the sky and begins rising higher and longer, the pause can be a moment for us to reflect on the necessity of balance in our lives, the necessity of pausing to remember the restorative power of darkness, its invitation to new perspective, new wondering. The darkness asks us, as Josette read earlier, to be with only ourselves and our own thoughts. It is this darkness where we can commune with Spirit, in waking dreams or in sleep, in meditation and in visionary work. It allows us time to sort through things. It gives us space and distance from everything that surrounds us and allows us rest and quietude. I'm going to invite us for a moment into a time of practice, a ritual, if you will, very simple, in just a moment. A ritual that honors both our need to spend time in the dark, to be nurtured by it, and our need to celebrate and entice the return of more light into our days. So I would like to invite you just to take a moment now to think about a gift that the darkness may have brought you this year, a new perspective, new knowledge about yourself, something that the darkness of the longer nights nurtured in you. In a moment, I'm going to invite you to come forward and take 2 items from our community table this morning. First, I will invite you to choose a stone to take with you as a reminder of the gift that the darkness has brought you this year, a symbol of new perspective or deeper understanding. And I'm going to invite you to take then one of the small candles in the basket. There is balance in the world, and while we honor and are grateful for the gifts of darkness, we need the light as well. And so I'd invite you to take a small candle as well. You can put the candle when you get home in a small holder, or they are also meant to be floating candles, so you can put them in a small dish or cup of water. And as we head toward the solstice in a few days, I'll invite you to light the candle in the evening to remind you that the light is indeed returning, that it will bring new perspective too, and the possibility of new growth and new action. And those of you watching from home, I would invite you in the coming days to find yourselves a stone and a candle. Hold the stone in your hand and think about the gift that darkness has given you this year. And then in the evening, light a candle as an invitation to the coming light. Welcome it into your home and your heart. If you are not here today and are coming into the church building this week, there will be some candles for you to grab one if you want. And so with the idea, the gift that darkness has brought you this year, I'm going to invite people to come forward, and I didn't put numbers on your order of service this time. So I'm just going to ask that we just start over here, and as people come up, and leave some space for other folks to just be careful about spacing, and I'm going to trust that we can do this beautifully and well and gently with each other. So come on forward. Margaret Atwood wrote, "This is the solstice, the still point of the sun, its cusp and midnight, the year's threshold and unlocking, where the past lets go of and becomes the future. As the light begins to return to our lives, either from the candles and fires of the season or because the days are lengthening, may we not forget the beauty and promise of the darkness, and that the darkness and the light form one holy circle of balance, wholeness, and possibility. May it be so." Our closing hymn for us to hear today and hum along to is Rising Green.
My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak, her sap doth run in my veins, boundless my soul like the open sky, where the stars forever have lain, where the stars, where the stars, where the stars forever have lain. My hands hold the weavings of time without end, my sight as deep as the sea. Beating my heart sounds the measures of old, that of love's eternity. That of love, that of love, that of love's eternity. I feel the tides as they answer the moon, rushing on a far distant sand. Winging my song is the wind of my breast, and my love blows over the land. And my love, and my love, and my love blows over the land. My foot carries days of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green, rising green, rising green to bring a new day.
And now we'll extinguish the chalice, if you'll follow along. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Before we conclude our service with Kurt's postlude, I want to remind you that you were invited to join one of our times for quiet gathering this week, Monday at 1 o'clock here in the sanctuary and Wednesday at 1 o'clock on Zoom. We will share a poem, a little music, and then share a time of loving silence together for the rest of the hour. And of course, join us here or on Zoom on Friday evening at 5 p.m. for our Christmas Eve service. Jonathan and our choir and Kurt have created some wonderful music for us, and we'll finish the service all together singing Silent Night by candlelight out on the patio. So please do join us 5 p.m. on Friday if you can. And so as we end our gathering and move forward into the wintry world, may we not bemoan the dark, but relish it. May we feel its powerful presence even as the light returns. May we rejoice in its mystical embrace. And as we welcome the return of the warming light, may we continue to celebrate the deep and nourishing dark. Go in peace, my friends, to love and serve the world.